million-dollar man always gets his way. I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
If you would like to get your song reviewed, dear listener, there's the filthy capitalist option. As Sori says, 125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You don't have to be a part of the alliance. You don't have to be part of the group.
Wait a minute.
And the biggest thing is you don't have to wait. You hop, skip, and jump right in front of everybody. 125 gets you there. You do that 3 times, and you get mashed down to the $75 rate for perpetuity.
Yes!
Also, there is a band review option. So if you've got a band and you're trying to get your band some exposure, hit me up at vinsori@gmail.com, and I'll show you the details about how to pull that off.
You can also jump on Patreon, and there is a option on the tiers to be able to get your band reviewed. Obviously, we can't lie to you, so we can't guarantee a positive review. Get what you get.
It's just rubbish.
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 That's British for garbage.
My favorite is the community option. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon. You get to join an alliance. The alliance joins their points together, and that helps determine what songs that we do.
The alliances hang out on Discord.
Message me on Patreon to get the link.
And they do all kinds of other cool things. They do Minecraft, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. It's really a community within the community. Anybody can go on the village, facebook.com/Vin and Sori. There's 160,000+ people on the channel. What's cool about the Discord is that it offers a real opportunity for community connection, friendship, that type of thing.
And it's on Discord, so if you're not a Facebook person, it's for you.
You start off at $1.
Right.
Plus you get exclusives. Sori and I are working on a song. So the first 15 seconds of that was on Patreon. Also, at $15 tier and above, when we actually debut the video, they're going to be there live with us. There you are, dear listener.
Buy our merch. Hey.
And the child shall lead them. Buy our merch, she says. Okay, so right now, we're streaming this to Facebook because our YouTube account has been temporarily banned from streaming.
Yep. We've gotten a strike, folks.
We've got another copyright strike, ladies and gents.
Yep.
So Vincent came up with the really cool idea to buy a ticket from a certain band because they were doing a live show. And so spend $30 on the ticket and then stream it for everybody. And
Sori didn't think it was a good idea.
That good deed got us a copyright strike, so we're not live streaming from YouTube. We're live streaming from Facebook. I still think that idea is redeemable, and we're gonna do the same thing for Mortal Kombat. But I've got a workaround that we're gonna use to solve that problem. There's always a way to solve that problem. So basically, one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be watching media together, sort of an outgrowth of this channel. A lot of our folks are gamers, so Mortal Kombat seemed appropriate for the channel. Obviously, the band live streaming earlier was so if it makes sense for our channel, we've got a Nightwish video to watch, etc., etc. If it makes sense for our channel, then there are movies and shows that we're going to watch together. We'll give you a link or whatever, and then you'll be able to participate. But that's going to come in an update video. For now, we've got the big homie Gabe requested a song by the band Pearl Jam. The name of this song is Sleight of Hand. And so we are going to watch that video, Sleight of Hand, and comment on it like normal.
He said this is the song that made him want to jump on the 75 tier.
Really?
A long time ago, yep.
Okay. So
he's been waiting for quite some time to do this.
Without further ado, dear listener,
let's go.
It's time. Sleight of Hand, Pearl Jam. Let's go. Do you hear anything?
Nope.
I don't hear anything either. Prepare for ecstasy. The guy misspelled ecstasy. That's okay.
Routine was the thing. You wake up, wash and pour himself in uniform. Something he hadn't imagined being. As the merging traffic not remembering the change, not recalling the plan. Was it? He was okay, but wondering about wondering was it changed by consequence, or was he moved by sleight of hand? Mondays were made to fall, lost on a road he knew by heart. It's like a book he read in his sleep, endlessly. Sometimes he hid in his radio, watching others pull into their homes, while he was drifting on the line of his road, off the line, on the side, by the by. Has the time to say, as if moved by sleight of hand.
Like that.
When he reached the shore of his grip-on world, he resurfaced to the norm, organized his few things, his coat and keys, any new realizations would have to wait till he had more time, more time to think to himself. He waves goodbye to himself. I'll see you on the other side. Another man moved by sleight of hand.
And that's all she wrote, folks.
Did he die at the end?
Pretty sure he died at the end.
Yeah.
Pretty
that's what I
sure
thought.
it sounded like it was self-inflicted
Yeah,
at the very,
that's
very
what it
end.
sounded like to me as well.
This is an interesting song. I
It's
think,
very interesting.
first of all, I agree with somebody in the comment section that it was a bit sad. And I've never heard Pearl Jam do melody like this type of melody. The melody was more sugary than normal. Like and I loved it, by the way. I loved the melody. It was one of my favorite Pearl Jam melodies, but like they're usually more like grime. It's still melodic, like the Black song, like that Black song.
Yeah.
Wah! It was, it had that grunge kind of grime to the vocal style. This one was a little bit more pure.
Yeah. It had that sad sound to it that I love.
Yeah. It was very melodramatic, and not in the negative sense, but it was just, it carried a bunch of the, drama and the pain of the song. The song that we're talking about, Matt Torrey, is "Sleight of Hand" by Pearl Jam. What do you think? What do you think's going on in the song? And what do you what do you think the title means? What do you think the point of that is?
Well, sleight of hand is trickery.
Yeah.
It's when you're not actually doing a magic trick. You use sleight of hand to make people think you're doing something that you're not doing.
Right.
Routine was the theme. He'd wake up, wash, and pour himself into uniform. So he's a military guy.
I thought that or cop.
I was going to say it could also be a cop, but it made me think more military. Because when you think of PTSD, you think more military than you do cop. Like, I know that cops have to deal with that as well, but you hear about it more with military guys and being in war situations and then coming back and having to do regular life. So to me, that's what it was. Something he hadn't imagined being. As the merging traffic passed, he found himself staring down at his own hands, not remembering the change, not recalling the plan, was it? For me, this part was, so when he looks down at his hands, like, if you're in the military and the branch that you're doing makes it so that way you have to kill somebody. Now, that's to me what it was. He looked down at his hands and he doesn't remember the change, because one day he was one thing and literally the next day he was another, because what separated the day before from the next day was that he had blood on his hands. So that's why at his own, like when he's staring down at his own hands. But then it seems like it like messed with him. He was okay, but wondering about wandering. Was it age, by consequence, or was he moved by sleight of hand? So he's not able to find stability and to like settle down and kind of move forward. It seems like he's just, kind of going around. He's having a really difficult time. And then he's not even sure if it's like, people at a certain age, they kind of get this wandering, middle-age crisis type of thing. He's not sure if it's what he's been through, if it's his age, or if it was the consequence of what he had done. Or was it just sleight of hand? Was this some, trickery of himself, maybe? I guess that's where I would go with it. Trickery of himself, where you think, because there's a sense in which when you don't feel right anymore, you feel like your own self has betrayed you, even though there were situations that possibly were out of his control. I mean, if he joined the military, I mean, certain things are going to be required of you.
I took this as more of a cop. I didn't really take it as military background. Although I definitely could see why, because he talked about his uniform and then he was looking at his hands. But also, like, your hands also have the, your age lines, right? Like,
yeah.
I think what sleight of hand means is the passage of time. Because to Matthew Hoyle's point, sleight of hand is that trickery. It's a distraction trickery where you do one of these things and then in reality you're doing something with your left hand low, but you put your right hand high, and so and by the time you look at that thing, the thing has already happened. And I just took sleight of hand to be talking about the passage of time and aging. Like, you're caught up doing all this stuff, and then before you know it, you're 50 years old, and you've got less ahead of you than behind you. And I think, that's a traumatic moment for people who are not living intentional lives. So I take this as this is a cop. He's a beat cop, maybe a state trooper, and he's been driving the same roads over and over and over again. Like right here, Mondays were made to fall, lost in a road that he knew by heart. It's like, if you're one of these, and I don't really know how they operate, but basically what I got from my brother was that you're pretty much driving the straight kind of the same thing over and over and over again, and you kind of go in. It was
like a book he read in his sleep endlessly. Sometimes he hid in his radio.
Yeah, watching others pull into their homes, and again, hid in his radio is either he just blasted the music while he's on his beat, like just listening to music, or he's trying to bury himself in his work because the police radio, you know, go to this house, go to that house, go to this house. So he's trying to bury himself in his work so that he doesn't have to deal with, you know, his life or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I took it as a guy who's kind of like past his prime. He did the cop thing. And for whatever reason, I don't know generally what drives this guy to suicide, if he does at the end of the.
When it said lost on a road he knew by heart, to me that was like he was really suffering mentally. And so even though he knew the place by heart, he felt lost in his own comfortable surroundings because he was having such a difficult time.
Yeah, but again, Mondays were made to fall. That seems more like the drudgery aspect of life, not necessarily like the trauma.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes he'd watch others pull into their homes, which you would probably, you know how sometimes like we'd hang out and like we'd see somebody and you'd say, tell me about that person. And then we would just make up a story about the person's life. Mm-hmm. Like I can imagine being a lonely cop. You're doing the same routes all the time and you see these people and you've got this entire, you know, and it would be kind of weird. Like, you know, you see this new couple, let's say a new couple moved into a neighborhood and they always kind of like are coming home at the time that he's there, you know, like it'd be crazy to see, oh, she's got a bump. Mm-hmm. Oh, now there's a baby. And if you're driving the same over and over again, like so you're like an outsider looking in, you're not really in that world, but it sounds like he kind of wishes he was in that world a little bit when he's talking about watching his neighbors. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like there is a sort of like watching of the neighbor that's like voyeuristic and gross, but there's also the watching of the neighbor where it's like sometimes I'll catch people looking at us like just because of the way that we are. Like usually it's be a single mom or something like that. We'll be in Walmart and I'll just see them looking at us. But I just think, I mean, it could be because of the channel, but I just also think that there's like that'd be cool to have that kind of a support, you know, type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't think people have seen us outside like without each other. You know what I'm saying? So like sometimes people are outsiders looking in a world that they wish they were a part of. I mean, I grew up like that a lot. You know, I tell you that, you know, like listening to Focus on the Family and all that stuff. It was kind of like that. It was like these evangelical Christians would talk about family issues and they talk about, oh, what to do with your kid when he becomes a teenager and all the, oh my God, my kid talked back to me. And, you know, like these ridiculously, you know, to me, asinine issues. And I remember thinking like, man, I wish I was a part of a family like that where that was the big problem and the whole family had to come together to help this wayward girl because and all it turned out was she, you know, stayed out past curfew and all. I'm like, holy shit, these people's lives are so it kind of gave me that kind of feeling of like the outsider looking into something that you're never really gonna experience yourself. When he reached the shore of his clip-on world, that's interesting. Yeah. He resurfaced to the norm, organized his few things, his coat and his keys. Any new realizations would have to wait till he had more time. More time. There it is again. See, time is a sleight of hand. Yeah. Like time played this trick on you. Like you were so distracted by this other stuff and then you turn around and he's 50 now. And so now he's like everything's too late for him. All the things that he wanted to do, you know, all of his accomplishments.
So maybe he didn't kill himself. Maybe it's just that, you know, time moved him forward and now all of a sudden it's time to say goodbye. You know how that happens? Like where people will be like,
go?
To the
he
other
waves
side.
Goodbye to himself.
To himself, yeah, because it's his spirit leaving his body. You know
oh,
like
yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean he killed himself.
I'll see you on the other side. Another man moved by sleight of hand.
Which would be time.
Yeah.
Time and
time
age.
moves him on. I mean, it's
yeah, till he had more time, a time to dream to himself, he waves goodbye to himself. So he's just alone.
Yeah.
He's just a really lonely guy, which, you know, the longer and longer, you know, you live, you start to see how really hard that is on people.
To be alone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's yeah. Yeah, it's a hard. And you know what's interesting to me, which is very strange, this must be God, because everybody knows how I feel about this particular institution. But I can imagine that it must be extremely difficult right now to be a police officer. And again, I have very little love in my heart for that institution and the people that run that institution. However, there are very good cops in the world. And, you know, the sheep and the sheepdog thing is still applicable. Like, so, you know, gross movies, you know, there's sheep, there's wolves, and then there's sheepdogs, right? So the sheep are just regular people just trying to, you know, do their 9 to 5 and get home. And then there are wolves who are there to devour them, rob, steal, kill, rape. And then there are sheepdogs who step in the middle. And at some level, you have to say there's a large chunk of our police officers that join the force for that reason. Now, what happens to them afterward because of the institutional issues in the history and all the rest of it is, again, must be very difficult if you're a good person. And so, like, I can imagine being a cop and, you know, having all this, like, idealistic, I'm going to do good in my community type feel. And you know what? A lot of them have done a ton of good. Remember that time that it was Tex? And he was this homeless dude and he passed out. And usually cops are not very good to homeless people, at least where we're from. And he wasn't supposed to be there where he was. So basically it was like this bread shop where they just make bread 24/7. So
a very famous bread.
There's some like exhaust panel or something like that
moist
like,
hot air comes out of.
Moist hot air and it's cold. So Tex figured out, hey, if I sleep by this place, I'll be okay. Because it was cold outside, and every year somebody dies of, you know, hypothermia or whatever. And he was kind of not responsive when we went to him, and so the
not
cop
like dead, just
not really responding very well.
He must have taken a lot of something.
Yeah. A lot of mental health issues with Tex, a lot of alcohol and drug issues with Tex, but he would show up for church every Friday. He would say amen. He would sing. And so he was out there kind of like passed out. And, you know, we went to him, and then the cop basically, like, he was like, hey, what's going on with him? Is he okay? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, you know, technically he's not supposed to be there, but, you know, basically the cop was like, oh, it's okay. We'll let him, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, the cop, you could just see the cop was just genuinely concerned for his welfare. And the cop kind of, he told me afterwards, like, I'm glad you guys are here. You guys are doing a good thing. Thank you for, you know, whatever. So,
I mean, there was multiple times. Remember that other guy was walking in the street, going after the traffic. I mean, he was trying to kill himself. And we were there, and the cops were supposed to take him away.
And they let us have him.
They let us have him.
Yeah, that one, we were halfway through the message, and then B goes outside and was taking care of something. And then, you know, I closed it up, whatever, and then worship was going on. I went outside, and yeah, sure enough, the cops are all over the place, and they're going to take the guy in, and I told the cop, I said, he's mine, I'll take him. He's like, you're cop basically said, are you going to take responsibility for this guy? And I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, fine. So they left him, they gave him to us basically. And,
that was such a special night.
And I took him over to my place.
Yeah, we took him to your place. Yeah. I came over and I cooked meme soup and gave him meme soup.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And he was so happy, like, because
he was really content.
Yeah, now I realize that, like, you know, we've been doing a lot of like takeout because it's faster and I hate cooking. And but home cooked meals are just so wonderful,
especially the way you do them.
Yeah, they're homey and they're wholesomey and wonderful. But then when you get like takeout, it's like no love was put into this. This was just for money. Like, I really feel like you can taste the flavor difference because there's no heart in it. And so, like, I made meme soup and I put all the ingredients in there, and like, there was every bit of love went into every bit of that. I made sure every piece of it was done to perfection, so it would be awesome for him. And I gave him that bowl of soup, and I was so happy to give him that bowl of soup.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would have been so disappointed if he didn't like it.
He loved it.
He loved it, and a couple of the other people had come too.
I drove him home. He kept talking about that. He's like, that girl, man, she can really cook, bro. That soup was really good, man. Did you have some of it? I'm like, I ate the thing. I ain't funny, bro. I was like, yeah, bro. I said, he's like, oh yeah. He's like, but my point is, like, the cop could have been a jerk. Like,
Yeah.
you know, this guy was dead to rights. He was in the middle of the road doing all types of craziness. He had stuff on him. He had a knife on him. B took the knife, and
He was trying to kill himself.
Yeah. He had just something happened with his kids. Is what happened.
Oh.
Yeah, it was his ex or something like that. But my point is like, we weren't there, but there's lots of cops who end up doing that. Or like, you'll hear stories of the cop who he pulled this woman over because her light was out, and the cop buys a light, and actually no, he had those lights in his
And changed it for her.
whatever, for those situations. So then he goes behind and changes the lights for her, or
Yeah.
they're just so
We
many.
had like cops going and remember they were playing basketball with the kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just so many situations like that where, so I can imagine being a cop, you start like very idealistic, and then stuff happens where, either you see the corruption inside the institution.
Right.
You
Both.
see people covering for people,
Both.
looking the other way, and then you get sucked into this crazy. But on the other hand, you genuinely love your community, you're trying to do it, and so now you're stuck in the middle and you don't belong anywhere. Because you're not one of these true blue people. Like, you think that Officer Jenkins is really a fucking, a waste of space because he's so horrible to people, but you can't do anything about it because it's the union and this giant institution. What are you going to do? And then conversely, you turn on TV and everybody hates you. And then it's like, okay, I dedicated, 20 years to this, and this is where I'm at. And, life has gone by, and the sacrifices. Look, man, my brother was in law enforcement in Camp Lejeune, and the things that he saw there, and he was only there for about, like, honestly, I'm like, I wish he'd have just went to combat. I just feel like it would have been easier on him mentally if he was just in combat versus what he had to, people wrapping cars around trees, and he's a first responder. So it's like, he has to tell these people, like, and they're like, you got to help my son, or you got to help my daughter. And there's nothing he can do. He's walking in and seeing all these, like, people, these are Marines, right? So like, when they do stuff like on 50. And he's seen some really terrible, terrible suicides. Like, people going out in the most painful ways possible. It's like, why would you choose that? Like, so he ended up seeing a lot of terrible things. And you got to imagine some of these cops, man, you're, racking up 15 years in the force, 20 years in the force. They've seen pretty much everything. And these are horrible scenes. And I just think something different happens when you're a civilian, even though they're not really a civilian, versus like combat. Because the mindset is different. It's
of course. It's not like that's my enemy and we have to eliminate the threat.
Right.
It's like, these are just regular people that had an accident.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just expect to see a body every day, and you expect to see whatever. And
Yeah.
you actually celebrate, dead bodies in overseas for whatever reason, and nobody will ever understand unless they're in that situation. Whereas at home, it's like,
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too is when you see just like a regular person wrapped around a tree, you're like, shit, that could be my family.
correct.
But when you're killing the enemy, you don't think that your family
Well,
could
he
be
trained
on the
you.
side of the
He
enemy.
trained you. Trade, and you got the best of him. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to see dead people in normal life, and these cops have seen a lot of it. And that, again, like, you don't necessarily have to love the institution. But there's a difference between an individual and an institution, and somebody has to do that job.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's one of those things where it's like, I will very carefully agree with people who say, okay, you do it. You be a first responder. You know what else I didn't know about was firemen. Massive PTSD for firemen. There was that guy in that church one time I guest spoke for, and the pastor pulled me aside. I was like, hey, that guy's got serious problems. I was like, yeah, I mean, do your best with him. And he's like, no. You need to talk to him. I'm like, you're the pastor.
Yeah.
He's like, well, it'd be better if you talk. I was like, all right. So
Well, it's hard to know what to say when,
I mean, it was just horrible, horrible. The stuff that these poor people end up seeing, and somebody has to do it. Somebody's got to be a fireman. My point is, like, shout out to all the good cops out there. Like, I'm not a fan of your institution in any way, shape, or form, but
yeah,
I don't, and you know, Middle America, the Middle America channel is, and I don't think this song is necessarily about police, but I just think that, you know, these guys are doing an extremely difficult job. And I actually think if you're a good cop, the job is even twice as hard. You know,
for sure.
And maybe that's why guys turn. But anyway, to all the good cops and all the formerly good cops, maybe you lost your way. Shout out to all of them. Because you gotta give it to them. You gotta give it to them.
Well, I think it's difficult too, seeing like bad stuff over and over, not just traumatic stuff, but just like bad people. Like to see bad people all the time. Like I noticed from the time that we had, you know, we were helping a lot of, you know, homeless people, and there were people that were just got dealt bad cards, you know, and it just seemed like, wow, can they ever catch a break? But then there were other people where it was like, you're sabotaging your own self. And you would try to help them, and all they would do is take what you gave to them and go.
And that's the other thing. Is you also see not only the worst of humanity in the sense of murders and rapes and stuff that happens to kids, but you also see the worst of humanity in that the person looked you right in the eyes.
They conned you. Yeah.
Lied to you.
Yeah.
Lied to you.
And it's some of these people they're so convincing.
Oh,
you know, they're so good at what they do, and so it's
that's a conversation I had to do with Dorian, because he called me up. He was very disturbed, and this girl told him that her brother stole $200 from her and all this. He's like, all right. So he's like, Father, you know,
what do you think we should do about this?
Yeah, which is just him basically saying, let's cut this girl some money. And I said, little bro, her brother is probably her boyfriend, and they're probably trying to score on a heroin hit. I said, you know, I didn't give anybody any money. We almost, I don't remember ever giving anyone straight up money.
No, we did. We did. Well, I did sometimes. It just depended, you know?
Yeah, I said we had to know who we were dealing with.
And there were some times where I just said, Lord, you're going to have to.
I said, you have to post up. We have to know who we're dealing with. So, like, when we were down there 4 times a week, then yeah. Because I knew who was who, and they knew not even to come to me. But yeah. So cops have to see all of that too. So like, you know what's interesting is I don't think there's a lot in the way of mental health for police, and that's something that a lot of people aren't thinking about too. It's like you know, we don't do a good job at this either. But I mean, we understand, like, guys that are in combat. You go, okay, if a dude's in combat, then obviously he needs some help. Whether or not the VA comes through with it, is another
still
story.
A recognized
but at least,
issue. Yeah.
But I don't hear a lot about cops and PTSD and mental health checks.
I've actually never heard of it.
I don't really think that's wired into the institution at all. And you know, a lot of people were saying like X%. I was listening yesterday. It's like X%. It was a very high, like 67% of all the police involved fatalities. The person killed had a mental health issue. Like Ma'Khia Bryant, obviously she had a mental health issue. She's a prime candidate, right? She was, you know, in a foster care. That means sure stuff was going on with her parents. Very likely. Yeah. And then you could tell the way she was acting was completely irrational. I mean, the cop is like literally 2 feet away from you, and you're like, I'm gonna stab the fuck out of you, bitch.
I know.
And you know, rest in peace to her. So that was something I had never really thought of, like the mental health condition of a lot of these criminals. At the time they get killed, is they're not in a good place. George Floyd, same thing. You know, he's fentanyl, all the rest of it. Obvious mental health issues. But what she didn't mention was, what about the mental health state of the police officers who were doing these killings? And that never gets discussed. And again, it's not, anybody that knows me knows I don't have any pity for murderers or pity for people who, you know, whatever. I have no pity for it. But at the same time, it's like, well, how much can a person really deal with and see before you get them some help and you get them some, you know, attention?
Yeah.
So that there could be warning signs that this guy is you know, wigging out, you know? And should there be a limitation of how much time these people can spend in the streets in the first. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts at the same time. For policing. So when you talk about this is completely devolved into something else, but like the whole defund police thing, right? Like, I'm okay with that as long as you're talking about, restructuring and reorganizing what it looks like, because I still believe there's a necessity for it. And that's one of my problems with the movement as a whole. It's all these crazy things like defund the police. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, maybe we should actually get them more money and create a mental health wing in every police department and invest in the mental health of these guys.
Yeah, my thought was... And
maybe that'll help too.
If the stuff was doubled and they got more breaks, because when you have jobs that are that taxing, like your day in, day out, like have more breaks for them, so it's not so much.
Or if you're doing the beat, you get your PTO gets multiplied by 0.50% or something like that. So like the more time you're in the street, the more time you get off work. So you can get you can accrue you can accrue off work time quicker than an office guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
But anyway, that's not what Pearl Jam. But anyway, shout out to all the cops and maybe we need to increase funding for police and really focus on their mental health. Because let's say they do 20 years and never kill anybody, they still have 20 years. Like, I mean, so they give us 20 years of their life and then see you later and hey, figure it out. Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. So anyway, it's stuff that I'm thinking about for the first time.
Yeah,
as I'm
remember
listening to this song.
Remember we watched like that show or that movie or something, and the guy was like a cop and he was like beating his wife, and another cop came and got involved. Remember that whole thing?
Well, yeah, and there's that stat that domestic violence is very high among police.
Right.
And of course, the most uncharitable way to look at that is to say, yeah, that's because
that's the type of person
they were. Mm-hmm. But you know what else? You know who else has domestic violence that are very high? Ask anybody. When these guys come back from deployment, domestics are out the roof, and nobody would say that's because anybody who joined special forces is you would say no, they were obviously traumatized by what they saw, and now they don't know how to handle this anger, and now their poor wife is in the crosshairs. Like, so yeah, you could say, well, yeah, the person who joins the police force is the type of person that would beat his wife, or you could say the person who joins a police force is a very moral, is generally more of a moral, upstanding protector type guy, but then the exigencies of the job begin taxing you internally and externally, and you don't know how to handle. I'm not making any excuses for them, and you guys know how I feel about police, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting angles to think about, which this song has, oddly enough, done that for me, which is very, very strange. Yeah,
unexpected.
But it kind of, sometimes stuff hits you from left field, and you, this is probably from God being like, how about you be nice to this group of people? Because it's not like they can say, well, you'd be in a, how would you do in a bad situation? Blah, 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 blah. That doesn't really resonate with me. But a lot of stuff that I'm going to think about a lot after I get off of this thingamajig.
Well, Gabe, you've made the man think.
Yeah, because it also we've got some local stuff we're doing as far as policing goes, and I've never heard anybody bring that up, so that's something we should talk about with the group.
Well, there you have it. To me, this song is a 9.7.
I got to give this song a 10 because this is one of those songs that's like, I like the song anyway, but it's getting a 10 specifically because
it made you think.
It made me think. It's just one of those right place, right time type situations.
I agree with that.
So anyway, really, really good song. Thank you very much, Gabe, for this. A lot of stuff to think about. A a lot of cool stuff to talk about after offline. Anyway, Vin out.
Sorry out.
Down.